Hi, Niels.
Hi, Marloes.
Hi. I have a question for you. What is the common pitfall of organizations going through cultural development?
I think one of the pitfalls, that there's plenty, but I think the one that I run into the most is that organizations or leadership expect it to be over quite quickly, right? They expect the organization to do things in the same pace that they are used to. And the thing with leadership is that they're aware of what needs to change a bit earlier than, let's say, the majority of the organization. So at the point in time when leadership feels, okay, but now we're fully ready to shift, right, to switch or to make that switch, then the rest of the organization is still lagging behind. They're not at that level yet. And the other thing, and it's closely related to that, we're humans, we're creatures of habit. So it's quite difficult if you expect a culture change to take place. I mean, there's things that you can do overnight, basically. If you want the office to look differently, you do it, right? If you want people to have different mugs, if it's a merger between two companies and you want the new logo to be there, replace everything overnight. That's the easy part. But when you actually really want people to move along with that change, it just takes time. It's more difficult to change your habits, or it's not more difficult, but it just takes time to do that well. So that pitfall of expecting it to change overnight, it's just not going to happen. Creatures of habit, that's what we are as humans. So it takes literally, it takes years before you get to a level where you say, okay, now we've completely accustomed to what this is about. Now we're in the new aspired culture, let's say. This is what we would like to have with each other. Now,
Okay, and what is the best way to implement that and to get people there?
there's lots of ways, but one of the things I'd like to do is to look at what people are doing in terms of performance and how they are achieving their performance. So it's part of the employee life cycle. I think in general, when you're running culture development, be that transformations or mergers or maintenance, you really need to alter the way that you run the employee life cycle, all the way from talent acquisition to onboarding, but also training and development and separation, saying goodbye to people. Now, in that whole employee life cycle, something that everyone does throughout the company every year is the performance cycle or performance management or performance development or whatever companies like to call it. And I think, and this used to be the case some time ago, it's not the case anymore at all companies, right? That you did this annually once a year throughout the whole company, that HR would have the 9-cell grid on the table where it said performance and potential. I think a lot of companies, and rightly so, have abandoned that principle already. But what I'd like to do is look at performance, so the what. So what have you achieved? And comparing that to how have you achieved that? And how have you achieved that? You can link that to your culture, the aspired culture that you would like to have. It could be your values, or it could be competencies so that you can actually measure them. It could be subjective. You could do that with the 360, right? So asking my manager, for instance, my peers, my direct reports, maybe also the client, what their view of me is. To what extent I embrace the values of the company, or to what extent I excel in embracing that full culture that we agreed upon. So if you compare those, so what have I achieved and how have I done that, you quickly find out that, for instance, people that excel in performance, right, but they're not embracing the values or the culture the way that you would like to have it, these are the people that you need to say goodbye to. And that's hard for companies, right? Because these are the people that are actually overperforming. They're getting 120% of their performance every year. And it's a key performance indicator, right? So it weighs heavily on performance. And there's this aura around these people that they really excel. But if they're not abiding to, let's say, the rules of engagement, they're not embracing the culture, then actually these are the people that you want to say goodbye to. And you need to do that. And you need to do that swiftly, because anything else will fail in that respect, right? If you maintain or if you keep these people within the company, then, and there's this famous quote, I think, that says the culture that you get as a company is the worst behavior that you tolerate as a leader. So if you tolerate this behavior, people performing really, really well, but not doing that in a way that suits your culture, that fits your culture, yeah, anything else will backfire. All the other initiatives that you're running, they won't work, or they won't be picked up by people because they don't believe in that you're true to what you're saying. So
Okay.
yeah, that's an important one, and it's not an easy one, but it's an important one.
Yeah, and I can imagine that performance is really measurable, so you can measure it very easy. But how do you measure the behavior then? Like how it's very hard to get through that.
Yeah, it's more subjective, but mind you, so these 9-cell grids used to be performance versus potential. So you had the same axis here, but on the other end, the x-axis, you were looking at potential, which was also a bit subjective in essence. I think what I was just explaining, right? You can do a 360, for instance. That's also a way of subjectively measuring where people stand. You could do it a bit harder, if you like, or harder in the sense that it's less soft. So you can actually obviously measure people in terms of their competencies. So where do they rank? How well are they in being having business acumen or being collaborative, for instance? There's ways that you can measure that. When you get the client perspective in, obviously through surveys or questionnaires, still it's subjective. But as long as you have, for instance, with the 360, if there's a lot of people that you ask, okay, there could be an outlier on the positive end of the spectrum, the negative end of the spectrum. But all in all, you will find that these metrics are quite accurate, or quite accurate predictors of how well someone is embracing the culture or the values that you have. There's other more harder metrics, I think, that can come into play, but I found these suitable whenever I do this, because it's also something that people then are part of themselves, right? They also will rate other people, the team, the people in their team, their manager. So it feels like it's a fair way of measuring it.
Okay, and if you look at performance and behavior, what is the direction of the correlation? So which of the two
Mm.
is the leading indicator?
Yeah, it's good of you to see spell that out, because it is a correlation. Let's dwell on that for a bit, because what I've seen and what I believe in, but then it's a paradigm, right? Is that there is a causal link. Science, however, will tell you that this is a correlation, and so let's stick to the correlation. So, right, you could argue that once performance goes up, so people are getting their targets, let's say, so there's plenty of bonuses, that people will start behaving better. Or the other way around, because they're behaving better and they're embracing the culture, they will start performing better. Both can be true, because they're highly correlated, but it's a correlation, right? So we don't know the direction, the actual direction. What I have seen, though, and you need to maintain doing this for a couple of years, is, but it's also confirmation bias, I guess. What you see is that once people move up this direction, so they start embracing more of the culture, then over time, performance will go up. The other way around, I see that less often. But, and this is why I'm saying confirmation bias, there's one thing that is really important. You also need to let go of those people, right? That you see on the left top of that graph, let's say, or that 9-cell grid. So if they're performing really, really well, but you need to say goodbye to them because they're not behaving well, obviously then, because you get these people out, then yeah, the correlation tends to go the other way. But over time, and I've done this for 3, 4, or even 5 years at companies, you see that the movement will be on the horizontal axis first, and then on the vertical axis. So more of a culture embracing first, and then you can see performance going up.
Okay, and you said that this will take a lot of time. How long does it take to reap the benefits of this approach?
Yeah, as I said, I've seen this working, or I've been involved with this for 3, 4, 5 years. You can already see the benefits of it after a year. It does require that, for instance, the mid-year performance review, you also spend time on this. It helps if you communicate about it openly throughout the year. It helps if there's other initiatives that play into the hands of this mechanism working. So what I mean by that is that the rest of the employee life cycle is also being overhauled. Because if it's just performance management and training and development is still in the old world, let's say, then yeah, what are you giving people, right? You're giving them hammers, and they actually find screws when they're back at their desk, so they can't do anything there. So in 1 year, you can see already some results, but again, part of those results are, also initiated by leaders, right? As I said, you really need to get rid of those let's call them rotten apples, because if you don't, then people will just don't believe you, and they know, right? Performance is more important than behavior. So why would I do anything on this dimension? I'm just going to stick to this one. The other reason that you need at least a year for this to be effective is that is the year that you're actually being exposed to this mechanism, right? You're having conversation with your manager around the scores of your 360, for instance, in the case that you're doing that. And that's when you actually get into that conversation. Okay, you're not doing really well on the behavior axis. What's going on and how do we improve that? So yeah, a year at minimum. If you really want to do this well, and if you want to bear the fruits of really doing this longer term and also seeing performance increase, then 2-3 years, I would say.
Okay, well, seems like it's going to happen very easy then. Thank you for your insights, and I hope our
You're
community
welcome.
will do something with it.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.